Hello, everybody, and welcome to, again, the greatest podcast possibly of all time in human existence, the Caregiver's Toolbox, your tools for everyday caregiving. My name is Ryan McAniff. I am the owner of a home care company right outside of Boston called Minute Women Home Care. And this podcast is for families and people that are looking for education on senior topics. And today we have a great guest, Dr. Jennifer Stelter, who wrote a book called The Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer Disease. We're thrilled to have you with us and to be able to promote what you're doing to our audience, because it's so important, especially with dementia and Alzheimer's, that awareness and understanding and being able to kind of learn more about this disease that affects so many people, but a lot of people wait until it's kind of banging at the door before they start learning about it. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm really glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we had a couple reschedules because of our we're such important, busy people. We had to reschedule a few times, but that's kind of the way that the world works, and it's the beautiful thing with Zoom that you can always just drag and drop to a new calendar. So it's great we were able to connect. Before we get deep into the book and kind of some of the bullet points that you wanted to talk about that you think are really valuable from the book, what is kind of your background? Kind of what is your you're not an author by trade. This is one of your first or second book that you've put out. So what do you do on a daily basis that helps people and your day-to-day job?
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit about my background. I'm a clinical psychologist by trade. My journey is a little bit different than any typical psychologist or any typical caregiver, really. Oftentimes I've spoken to so many caregivers in this industry over the years, and they typically have a loved one who had suffered with Alzheimer's disease. Now, I did have a grandmother-in-law who did have Alzheimer's disease, but really my journey in helping people started way early on when I was young. I actually went through my own mental health journey. And in that mental health journey, I learned the power of using various tools and coping skills that really helped me to get through and recover and really become, a person who wanted to provide and give back to the community. And so at that point, I decided I wanted to go into psychology and really spread the love of this idea of using coping skills. And so my first half of my career was in working mostly with folks with mental health disorders and concerns. And then I transitioned really in working into senior living about the time that I graduated with my postdoc and kind of entered into the senior living space at that time. And so I quickly went into corporate management with a long-term care company here in the Midwest and provided consultation to them in looking at their dementia programs, social work, it was their behavioral health programs, and so on and so forth. And very quickly, within about a year, I was really intimately involved with their dementia programs and just fell in love with those folks who are on this journey with dementia, their families, the staff members. It's just unbelievable, what they're doing. And so with the knowledge that I had and really trying to spread the love, to folks who had mental health concerns about the use of coping skills and how non-pharmacological tools, when you have those in your hands, you can be really powerful at having control over your health, over your journey, and really securing, what your choices are within that journey. And so I said, I can do this here too, because we have families who are lost. We have staff who are not properly trained, who are lost, right? And at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're providing great quality care to those who have dementia. And so I said, I can share that passion here as well. And so over about a 11-year space, just working intimately with those who have dementia, staff members, family, like I said, I actually developed a model of care that made sense to a lot of people. It's called the Dementia Connection Model. And in the book that you had mentioned, I talk extensively about it, how to apply it, how to use it on a day-to-day basis. And it really is something where people are finding this is a great framework to understand the disease, but even better yet, what tools I can use to help me be successful when I'm caring for those with dementia. So again, my journey is a little bit different than most psychologists. They usually just go into mental health and they stay there. For myself, I switched from mental health to more dementia care. and have been able to really spread the love of education and tools, which is really, why I developed the business that I'm in today. My business partner, Jessica Ryan, and myself, she's a biologist, I'm a psychologist. When we came together, we developed a company called NeuroEssence. It was really it's so serendipity, the name of your podcast, because we always tell people, fill your toolbox with tools, right? So we developed the company to educate people on different tools that they can use to help nourish different neuro diseases. And then we primarily focused on dementia care when I started to really release the Dementia Connection model. The book came out. And then earlier this year, we launched the Dementia Connection Institute by NeuroEssence. And so we can get into that, but that's really the journey of how I came to this space. And I'm really excited to be here to share at least hopefully some tidbits that people can take away.
No, you have a ton of stuff going on, because obviously I did a little bit of research before we sat down, and one of the things I liked, and actually I'll get to that in a moment, but I mean, I think it's very interesting, and the proof is in the pudding of that you're doing something you're really passionate about, because I think you could have very easily stayed in the mental health side. That's a booming business, for lack of a better term. There's a lot of people that are struggling, especially after COVID-19 and how everything's been kind of turned upside down for so many people. And then to, decide to go into more of the Alzheimer's and dementia side of things, there's certainly a lot of people there as well. So you had your choice in between two industries, and you really found your passion with dementia. And one of the things that I liked about your website is that you have a couple pages on there that is just, it looks like Amazon. You have just a lot of, and I mean that in a good way, you have a lot of books on there for people to be able to look into and say, hey, listen, I mean, obviously they range in certain subject matters, but you are showing people, hey, here's a lot of resources that you can have that are at your fingertips, and you can just click on this button and it will be shipped to your door in 24 hours, and you can kind of learn on your own if that makes sense for you at this point in time, which very much goes in line with kind of what I'm doing with this passion project of putting out information and giving people educational tools to learn on their own for their own journey. So I thought that was kind of certainly a common denominator between what you and I had with kind of our passion. Certainly you have to put food on the table, you have to make money, but it's also good to be able to help people and provide that. And so just out of curiosity, what made you do that? That's a lot of work to set up a site that has that many books and that many resources. What kind of caused you to decide to go down that route as well?
Well, it's just really to provide people all the, again, tools. I'm going to keep using that word over and over, to provide people various tools, because what works for one person may not work for another person. And so we have to make sure that we have plenty of tools in our toolbox that people can use that relate to them and their situation. And then when I developed my book, the one that you mentioned, The Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer Disease, I specifically made it a workbook. So that way caregivers can take notes as they're going through the book, and they can take note of what's working with their loved one, or if the staff member who's working with someone with dementia wants to read it, if they're using it for the resident, what's working, what's not working. So at the end of the day, they have a figurative toolbox of all the tools that did work with them in that book. And so they can carry that book around or have it on their bookshelf and take it out and reflect on it or reference it when they need to. And so with that, it's an easy read that they can take notes along the way, and it'd be kind of like a little journal of their experience and learning how to really effectively connect with that person with dementia.
And everybody's experience with dementia is completely different. It would be perfect if there was just one not easy, but one path that would make things easier to be able to handle with dementia. But everybody's kind of experience can widely vary when you get multiple family caregivers in the same room, and they'll have things that are in common, at a memory cafe, but there will be things that are completely different as well of their experiences. So that's good that you have that ability to kind of, have people kind of be able to to find the different subjects that relate to them. Now going back to just so that I understand, the Dementia Connection Institute, did that come first, and then you wrote the book off of your experiences with those certified programs, or was it the other way around? How did those two line up for you? What was the chronological order for all of this coming, because you have so much going on?
Absolutely. Actually, it was in the order of, I first developed the model, then the book came, and then the institute came. And so when I was working alongside those who have dementia and really helping guide and mentor staff and families when they would come in and visit their loved one, because where I consulted there was assisted livings, there was skilled nursing, and I just found that staff were just at a loss of what to do. And I said that there's got to be an easier way to explain this to them of what's really going on. And when I've talked to nurses and CNAs, they would say, I was never trained about dementia care in my schooling. We maybe had a class on it, and not a course, but actually like one day, one topic, we talked about it. And so for me, I was like, wow, I'm just so surprised about that. And so, at that point I said, most of these folks, when they're coming as a professional to this field, and they're getting their job at either a long-term care facility or assisted living, they are not having the knowledge. And so the organization is responsible for training 100% all knowledge on dementia care to these professionals. And I said, so there's got to be a better way to do this. And so as I was starting to implement some of the model with the residents that were treating and working with and caring for, we could see them come alive, and the staff were like, this is really working. I totally get it now. And I said, I think I have something here. And so when I put together a book proposal, I'd sent it out to a couple of publishers, and Johns Hopkins called me and said, we want your model, we want your book. And so it was a journey of writing, actually a short amount of time, 6 months of writing, but it takes a couple of years for it to publish. And so with the editing process, we finally published last year in October. And then I was talking to my business partner, and I said, you know what? I said, there's just so much that we can do here in this space in dementia care. I know we love all neurodiseases. We talk about all neurodiseases, but we really can do something here. And she said, let's do. And I said, let's develop the Dementia Connection Institute. And so we were proud to be able to open it in January. And we started off by just providing a lot of live, either in-person or virtual trainings and CE presentations on various topics related to dementia care. And then from there, we actually literally this week, we got accepted to launch our certification program. So people can become Dementia Connection Specialists or Dementia Connection Specialist Certified Trainers. And so we're happy to announce that this week that we'll be offering that to the community. And what's great is that the DCS is available not only for professionals, but also available for family caregivers, which is the first certification out there for them. So
congratulations on that. And I'm sure our listeners have never heard of the Johns Hopkins University whatsoever. That must have been extraordinarily exciting to have such a well-known, well-recognized name like that, buy into the mission and to the information and your vision of what you wanted to do. That must have been extraordinarily rewarding and exciting moment when you got that call or that email or however that news was broken to you.
Absolutely. Unbelievable.
That's great. So now we kind of know your history, your background. You're obviously doing a lot with Alzheimer's disease, and we could certainly have a long conversation about the difficulties of the training and how tough that is for assisted livings, for nursing homes, for home care companies. But at the end of the day, this all starts usually with a family member, right? The family member is the first caregiver, and then there's usually a lot of other different caregivers down the line in most situations. So with the Busy Caregiver's Guide, one of the things that we wanted to talk about, there were 3 big points, and the kind of, did you want to start with the struggle with eating? Is that a good starting point, or would you like to talk more about kind of the dining program at assisted living facilities?
Yeah, we can certainly talk about the struggle with eating, and I'll kind of move into
Sure.
that topic of what we did for tools. So, I mean, eating becomes a struggle, and I think a lot of family caregivers know that. It happens for a variety of reasons. From a neurological standpoint, as the disease is progressing, they're losing that signal of wanting to eat, right? That hunger signal. And that's more later on in the disease, of course. But before that happens, there are things within the environment that can disrupt their ability to focus and to stay positive and to stay engaged in that eating process. There's also, visual concerns that are happening that are, finding them difficult to be able to see the food and recognize the food. There's also, speech and language around, that too, where, at some point they're going to start to lose the words of what some of those food items or even the food utensils are called, but they also then start to lose the meaning. What is the food? What does food do for us? Why do we need to have food, right? What does a fork do? What does a spoon do, right? Those things get lost again. And so that makes trouble for eating as well. Their taste buds change, of course. They start to crave sweeter foods. And so that becomes a challenge when you're trying to feed them, more, of course, more nutritious foods and things like that. And so, what I'm kind of getting at here is, the dementia connection model, the first pillar of that framework talks about the theory of retrogenesis. And that was actually developed by Dr. Barry Reisberg. And I included that in the model because it's such a powerful understanding of what's going on. And essentially what I was describing to you is all skills go in reverse to infancy is what he found through his years of research. And so we're talking about language skills, coping skills, activities of daily living, right? How to feed yourself, for example, what we're talking about, right? Everything goes in reverse. And so what's happening is they're experiencing their world differently than a full-grown adult like you and I. And so their way of navigating the world changes, and they actually see the world through a lens very similar to an adolescent. And so what that means is that in adolescence, how a lot of our children thrive in the first few years of life is they are primarily using their senses to learn. Before the age of 5, they're learning how to eat, how to walk, how to talk, right? All those things that, become so natural to us, right? They're learning that really through seeing and hearing and tasting and touching and smelling, right? They're learning all of that very young in life. They're not picking up a book and reading it, right? I mean, we have to kind of look back and be like, how did we learn how to talk and walk, right? We didn't pick up a book. We watched people do it. We practice it ourselves over and over again, right? So because we know folks with dementia are going towards that younger state and experiencing life through the eyes of a young adolescent, sensory stimulation is going to be your main tool because you need to connect with them through their senses now, because that's how they're going to continue to learn and be on that journey. And so the understanding of that theory of retrogenesis is really important so we can put ourselves in our loved one's shoes to say, what's really going on? What can they do? What can't they do? And why, right? And the why is because everything's going in reverse to infancy, right? So that's really the struggle with the eating portion of it. Now, the actual, how do I help my loved one with dementia who's struggling with eating, right? So when we talk about the second pillar of the dementia connection model, that's called habilitation. And that's simply, we're reinforcing the skills that they still have, right? That they can use their senses to be able to learn new information. We're going to reinforce that over and over and over again. So that's a daily thing, right? And we talk about eating, that's at least 3 times a day, right? Unless, there's snacks as well. And so we're going to reinforce that over and over. So that's the how component. And then the what is the tool, right? Sensory stimulation. That's the third pillar of the dementia connection model. We're going to use sensory stimulation to engage and connect with them. And so with that said, we want to make sure all stimuli is positive. What does that person like? What do they not like, right? And so we want to make sure that the stimuli we're providing is positive. So I want to talk a little about, a focus group that I did at an assisted living in 2016, where we had a group of residents that ranged in dementia, all kinds of stages, early to late. And most of them were moderate to late, but we had a few early in there as well. And in the assisted living, we set up some basic sensory stimulation techniques to see if we can get them to be able to increase their meal consumption, to see if we can have that for those who need to gain weight, because unfortunately, when you don't eat a lot, you lose weight. That's not a good thing for those who have dementia. So we wanted to see if we can have them gain weight or maintain. And then some residents were drinking supplements instead of eating real food. That's not a way of life. So we're like, can we decrease those supplements and have them eat real food? So those are the three kind of objectives we were looking at, right? And so we implemented aromatherapy, which is olfactory stimulation. So every single meal, about 30 minutes prior, we would diffuse a citrus scent, because citrus actually improves mood and it increases appetite, right? So that's wonderful for our hungry, people with dementia, right? And so with that said, we diffuse citrus at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner every day. And then what we did, we played music, right? And we played music of the era of the population that we were treating at that time. And so a lot of it was, 40s, 50s kinds of musics that they enjoyed. And we tailored this to see if there were some music tones that we played and they didn't like that, then we wouldn't play that. And if they did like it, then we would, right? By looking at the expressions on their face and looking at their body language, we could tell if they enjoyed it. We played that 30 minutes prior again to each meal, every single day, right? And then what we also did was we changed some of the plateware. And so let me go back. Music, obviously auditory stimulation. Then we changed the plateware. So that's visual stimulation. We were using bold color plates. So bright reds, bright oranges. We were looking at some research that was done previously in the industry. And we had shown there was some information looking at increase in meal percentages by about 24% when you serve food on a bold color plate, like red. And so we said, let's incorporate that as well as visual stimulation. So we did those three things. And we, again, did this every single day for every single meal. And what we were able to do was just unbelievable. Before I get to the actual data itself, I just want to share, this part of the dementia connection model is there is an instantaneous reaction. When you provide positive stimuli, they are actually influenced to feel positive feelings, okay? And then that inadvertently creates positive behaviors. But the long-term effect is, we're talking about this whole concept of learning, right? They can still learn. After about 4 weeks or so, what we found was when the residents would smell the smell and hear the music, they would actually wheel themselves to the dining area by themselves because they knew it was time to eat, right? So we were able to use that methodology to be able to influence more independent behavior. So the staff could focus on the residents who really couldn't wheel themselves anymore. They could focus on bringing them to the dining area, where the other residents who but needed assistance before no longer needed assistance to wheel themselves to the dining room, which was fantastic. And then when they were at the dining table and they saw their bold color plates, they knew it was time to eat. And so they would engage in the eating process. So that was just unbelievable to witness. And so when I developed the dementia connection model, we learned that it is a cognitive behavioral technique. And what that means in psychology is that essentially we are influencing their feelings by the use of sensory stimulation in a positive way, which then influences positive behaviors. Now, before I get to the data, let me talk to you about why that happens. I'm going to get a little clinical, okay? This happens because when we have stimuli coming in through various parts, right? Our eyes, our nose, our ears, our fingertips, whatever it might be, that either directly or indirectly influences our limbic system in our brain. And our limbic system houses two awesome organs: our amygdala, which is responsible for our feelings or generating feelings and emotions, and our hippocampus, which is responsible for generating memories, right? So when we're bringing in positive stimuli, it will influence positive feelings and positive memories. And that ultimately, through the cognitive behavioral approach, influences positive behavior, right? And so that's the wonderful piece about using sensory stimulation, is that we're tapping into the brain that's allowing the person with dementia to feel good, right? And what happens with the memory piece is when they start to associate feeling good with the person who's giving them that stimuli, they feel good around that person. So they associate the positive feelings with you. They start to trust you. They start to want to be with you more. They want to go along with what the things that you'd like them to do, right? And so that creates a deeper connection for that caregiver, which is awesome. But let me get to that data for you, Ryan. So
well,
I'm going to look
one
up in my
thing I
book
was
here.
just going to mention for people that are listening that are digesting this, there have been a couple viral videos that have gone. There are a couple of videos that have gone viral, is what I meant to say, of people listening to music that they haven't heard in decades after being heavily down the line with dementia, and then it lighting up and singing and trying to dance in their wheelchair. So for those of you listening and saying, hey, maybe you're not skeptical, but saying like, what does this look like? How does this happen? You can type into YouTube and say, dementia patient listening to old music, and there will be a few videos that come up that will perfectly show what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of great research on the power of music. Music and Memory is a great resource. So if you go to the website, Music and Memory, I think it's musicandmemory.org, I think, great resource on all the research related to music. Absolutely. You're right, Ryan. But I wanted to share with you the outcomes of that focus group. So I'm reading from my book just because I want to make sure I get the percentages right. So we actually were able to increase, so 46% of residents increased their meal consumption, which was great. 54% either gained or maintained their weight. And we were able to reduce supplements by 72%, which is wonderful. So those are just some of the outcomes that we had from that particular focus group when we're able to implement the dementia connection model, which we formally know now is what it is. We didn't know that at the time because I was playing around with lots of different things, but that's what it was, right? And we were able to put it into practice, which is wonderful.
Now, one question I have is certainly where we were talking about kind of the sensory, getting the senses involved to start triggering the need to go get food, right? So if you smell the citrus, then all of a sudden that gets you a little bit hungrier. What about developing the habits behind that as well? Does that develop also kind of an ingrained habit that if somebody then smells citrus, whether let's say somebody happened to be eating an orange next to them in a non-eating time, is that going to kind of trigger, and this is a good thing, trigger somebody to say, oh, well, now it's time to go to the restaurant downstairs to have food, even if it's 3:00 in the afternoon and they're not serving dinner yet. Is that something that you find starts building up? Is that kind of habit where it's not just necessarily the citrus doing its job like you were talking about before, but it's just the fact that citrus is smelled, that it's like, oh, now it's time to go get something?
I think really, to answer your question, I think citrus does that reaction for all of us, all humans, because it is a natural kind of appetite stimulant, if you will. I think the combination of the various stimuli was what really did it for them over that 4-week period. But is it possible that they, smell an orange and they are hungry again? Sure, absolutely. And then we get that, those folks a snack. So, but yeah, I think it's the combination really of being able to put all those components together. And when they were able to smell and hear and then be able to see everything, it was like, yep, this is time to eat, right? And so it was a really nice way to be able to increase their independence, as well as be able to meet some of these things that we want to make sure that they're continuing to use their their feeding habits, right? When they're feeding themselves, we want to make sure we're reinforcing those over and over again.
And so, I've also heard of, not heard of, but also seen through my experiences in home care, that obviously one of the things, I shouldn't say obviously, most people probably don't know about because we're in this industry for a reason, right? For somebody with dementia, and I would recommend to anybody, if you have, most people don't realize this, but you probably have 3 or 4 nursing homes or assisted livings around your location that cater specifically to dementia patients, and they very often run programs for outsiders and professionals to come in, put on goggles, and really experience as close as they can what it's like to have dementia. And it's definitely worthwhile for people to do that, and then you can learn a little bit more. But one of the things is having major contrast is important, right? So a common issue that happens is the toilet bowl, right? Everything's white, and you don't realize that you're peeing onto a lid instead of peeing into a bowl because everything looks the same, because it's tougher to distinguish those variations of shadows, which is probably why, not probably why people put like a black toilet seat on, or a different color toilet seat, so there's more of a contrast. Now, it's interesting though that a red bowl or a red plate was what was it? The contrast between the food and the plate was the rim around the bowl red versus white in the middle where the food was. How did that work, and necessarily with that kind of contrast and having a bold color like?
So it's a little multi-layered here. So the bold color plate itself. So the red itself and yellow have actually been studied in humans. And when you think about McDonald's, right, multi-billion-dollar industry, right, because they knew the research on red and yellow. Red actually was shown in research to increase appetite, and yellow was to sustain attention. So either or I think will work, but we think about how the eye forms, right? Eyesight forms, excuse me. Let's start with infants, right? When infants are born, right? Really in the first couple of weeks, you initially go with black and white with that. Black, white, and red are the initial colors that within the first 2 weeks or so, right? But you quickly switch over to bold colors that you're using, or that's why their toys are bold colors. Their plateware is bold colors, right? Everything that you engage a young infant with is bold colors because we're trying to strengthen their eyesight, right? Now, because things are going in reverse for those with dementia, we don't want them to lose their eyesight. Now, people with dementia do struggle. A lot of them do have macular degeneration, or they have peripheral vision issues, but because we know that they're losing their eyesight, we want to keep them as strong as possible. So the more that you can use bold colors, you're actually exercising their eyes and their eyesight itself. So that there's that piece. What we did do with the food in contrast with the color. So what we did was we decided to choose the plateware based on what type of food we were serving. So for example, if I'm serving spaghetti, right, with noodles and red sauce, I'm going to serve that on a yellow plate. So the red sauce pops from the yellow plate, right? If I'm serving chicken, I'm going to serve it on the red plate because it contrasts with the red plate, right? And so we played around with that, and we found that the contrasting really helped as well, above and beyond just using the bold colors. And then to the point we're talking about with the toilet bowl, would highly recommend a colored toilet seat. I wouldn't go with black just because black below the knees for a lot of folks with dementia tends to be a little scary for them. They're not sure what it is. They can't see it very well. It seems to be like it's more like a hole. So they might see a hole within the toilet that's larger, and that might cause them to miss the toilet more if they're sitting down, or if they're, a man standing up urinating, they might urinate, outside the bowl, those kinds of things. So I would go with like a nice green color or blue color, maybe something that accents your bathroom very well, but does certainly contrast from the white bowl itself.
Makes sense. And I have to say there's it records only one of us at a time, but one of the things that certainly made me laugh was imagining the idea that, like, somebody who grew up listening to gangster rap, or somebody that grew up listening to Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, is going to be like, there's going to be an assisted living playing Biggie Smalls and like Nas getting, listening to like somebody, some gangster rap song going like, it's time to eat. Like, it's, right now it's probably like the Beatles and Buddy Holly and some of those kind of, obviously, nobody really hates the Beatles or Buddy Holly, but it'll just be funny that there's some metalhead listening to Metallica's like Black Album because that's, they have dementia 20, 30 years from now, and that was their album. So that will certainly be a little bit more of a circus for assisted living down the road with how things certainly change. But it's all very interesting on how that like you say, we revert back to our younger years, and it's like the Benjamin Button story, kind of in a weird way, that you're aging backwards, and those triggers of auditory or visual or your smell are going to be those big triggers like they were when you were a kid. And so you had this great success with the assisted living, this pilot program, and learning that, hey, listen, how can we get seniors who are afflicted with Alzheimer's or some type of dementia to eat more, gain weight, or maintain their weight, and that obviously then led into some other areas, and one of those areas is called the perfect day. And so we all want to have a perfect day. Everybody's perfect day is different. What is the perfect day for your book?
Absolutely. So we originally named this The Perfect Day for Ray. My muse for a lot of what I did in terms of brain health and really trying to stimulate the aging brain was after my grandfather. He's now passed away. He wanted to make it to 100. Passed away at 99. He's like, I'm going to make it to your book is published. And unfortunately, he did pass away earlier. But so that really came from him in terms of how can we set up someone for the perfect day? And so with that said, we use a variety of sensory stimulation tools to be able to create that perfect day, right? And that perfect day is really to allow the person with dementia to feel positive, to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel calm, right? And so it plays into a couple of different forms of stimuli. So first, when we talk about using olfactory, right? So we're going to go back to aromatherapy. Now, aromatherapy has been around for centuries. It's nothing new, but it's more new, of course, to America itself. Aromatherapy is very popular in other countries. And so when we talk about using it for people with dementia, we're going to talk about oils that have been researched for cognitive decline particularly. And so what we found when you're using aromatherapy is in the morning, you want to use a peppermint along with a citrus scent, right? The combination of those is really powerful because peppermint is very invigorating and provides mental clarity, which we all need in the morning, right? And then the citrus, of course, like I mentioned, it stimulates that appetite and boosts that mood, right? So for a person with dementia, that's really powerful to help them get up and start their day, right? And then, of course, throughout the day, we're going to be diffusing that citrus scent for all meals. And then right before sundowning, about 30 minutes, we're going to start to diffuse lavender, right? And lavender is very calming. And so with that said, we want to be able to help them to, if they do sundown, we want to get them through that sundowning process in a calm way. And then you can also diffuse lavender throughout the night, which helps with sleep if there's any sleep issues too. So that's an example of how to use the perfect day from an aromatherapy standpoint, or using olfactory stimulation, right? When we switch gears and we talk about music. So music's actually been studied, and this was actually found through Harvard University. They're suggesting that in the morning that you play upbeat music with words that they recognize. So a song of their era by an artist that they love, right? That starts to trigger our language skills. So that way, when we're singing along to it or we're humming it in our head, whatever it might be, it starts to engage the language skills early in the day for that person with dementia. Then around midday, around lunchtime, you're going to play music that's upbeat, but with no words. So maybe it's a tune they don't really totally recognize. Think about music that you might hear in an elevator, right? Or in your dentist's office or something, right? It's a nice tune, it's upbeat, but you don't have any words to it. And that allows them to socialize with their peers around them, or maybe their family members, something like that. And then the music that you would play, again, 30 minutes prior to sundowning, because you want to help calm them through that sundowning process, is called non-biharmonic music. So you play music that has one tone, like just a piano playing or a harp or a guitar, something like that. If they have a favorite instrument, then I would recommend playing that, which you can usually find in any kind of classical station or things like that. And so when you're doing that consistently every day, they are able to then start to assimilate, whether it's with the aromatherapy or with the music, they're able to assimilate time of day. And it helps to calm them to get through the sundowning process. The other tool that you can use is, cognitive stimulation. When we talk about, fun interactions like with trivia or word searches or crossword puzzles or Sudoku or those kinds of things, right? You want to preserve all of that for the morning time, okay? That's usually when they're at their best after we've diffused our peppermint and our orange, right? You want to engage them in cognitive stimulation during that time. We don't want to put that in if you're in charge of an activity calendar, or if you're if you're in a facility, or if you're at home. We want to make sure that happens in the morning, not in the afternoon, because that's when they start to become more fatigued and more tired. So unfortunately, if we're trying to stimulate them cognitively a lot in the afternoon, sundowning the chances will increase for that to happen. They'll become more irritable, right? So we want that not to happen. So we think of cognitive stimulation to be more in the morning. And we say cognitive stimulation is our sixth sense, right? We have five, but when we use our cognition, that is our sixth sense. And so those are just some examples. So the idea here is with the perfect day, you want to start your day with high intensity kinds of things. You want to be stimulated. You want to have your mood boosted, right? You want to be active, right? All in the morning. And then as the day goes on, you want to naturally allow the body to come down like this, right? So we start to decrease the level of excitement, right? With how we use aromatherapy or how we use the music, right? Or how we may engage with them. So relaxation activities are great for the afternoon. So if that includes any kind of yoga, massage, pleasant music, those kinds of things, because we want to move them into that sundowning hour in a very calm way. Now, through my years of research, I've been able to help mitigate sundowning by using the perfect day. And then we finally put a name to it, which is the perfect day. And so with that said, that really helps to mitigate sundowning. It's not a perfect formula. Humans are different every day, right? But it certainly does help to lower the chances of them sundowning, because we all know that's very hard time, not only for the person, but for the caregiver as well. And so it's a win-win situation when we're using the perfect day. So those are just some basic tools that go along with that concept.
Yeah, I mean, and people have to understand that they could, again, there could be some really perfect days and there could be some really good days, and there's going to be ups and downs.
Yes.
It's never going to be a magic bullet of this, but it's also important. And when you say this and you explain this all to me, one of the things that I feel like senior care is going to get very popular in senior care is, I think, and this is just one guy's opinion, I think that traditional assisted livings are going to not be as popular, especially after COVID-19. And I think there's going to be an explosion of memory care only assisted livings. I think assisted livings right now that do both, or you're going to see a lot of those traditional sides turn into memory care only sides. And, it's the one thing that has saved assisted livings from going out of business has been their memory care units, because the Alzheimer's disease the train kept going, whether COVID-19 is happening or not. And the reason I bring this up is that these types of programs, as we learn more about these diseases, as more information comes out, as there's more trials and errors about what's working and what's not working, I mean, that's what it ends up being, is that these programs in these memory care specific only buildings are going to be looking to programs like what you're talking about, of saying, hey, how are we going to add as much value as possible for our customers and our families to make sure that their loved ones are having as maybe pleasurable isn't the right word, but as calming of an experience, going through this disease as being as little turbulence as we can have. And I think these types of things are already gaining popularity in these types of buildings and will only continue to be more and more popular as time goes on, because we are going to be lack of a better term, overrun with baby boomers that have memory issues, because it's just such a giant swath of our population that is now, like, my dad's down in Florida. I talk about him all the time on the podcast. He's 74, maybe I'm in trouble, 75 years old. And he's kind of at the beginning of the boomer population. So you still have like a lot of people behind, so it's going to be very interesting. And your book and your program, I think, is going to be very popular, especially in senior care communities that are designed and are catering to people with memory care issues. Are you finding that, or am I just, old man screaming at the clouds over here? Or are you finding that that's kind of where things are trending? What are you seeing on that with your program, and certainly with where things are heading?
I agree with you. I mean, I think that traditional assisted livings for folks who don't have cognitive issues, although I think there'll be some around, I think that those are decreasing because people are wanting to live at home longer, which is understandable. And with so much technology and so much research on how to keep the brain healthy, a lot of seniors are investing in themselves to nourish their brain, which they should be. And Jessica and I talk about this all the time, how to keep your brain healthy within some of our curriculum. And so with that said, I think that, people are wanting to stay at home longer, but where memory care fits into that, to your point, is that I know a lot of families struggle with, when do I move mom or dad, or they have a lot of guilt around it, right? But the idea here is that when you are, placing your loved one into the hands of these folks who are trained, right? Because they're investing in this training now. We know that because, they're not getting the training in school. So the organizations are investing in this training into their employees, right? They're in the hands of people who are trained. A lot of these organizations are investing in folks like myself, which is wonderful. That's, evidence-based research into this that has been trialed, right? They're putting it into the program component of their services and care, and have that backing, right? And so when they're doing that, they're actually able to engage your loved one and care for your loved one with the utmost, kit and gloves. And it allows you as the family member to be the family member and not so much have to be that caregiver, right? I mean, the caregiver, that you'll always have it within yourself because you love your parent or you loved your loved one, whoever it might be. But, it allows you to be that, you're still the daughter or you're still the son, and have that relationship with mom and dad to the best of your ability that person can have with you too. And so it's that idea of, yes, I think memory care is going to be sustainable. I think that more organizations are moving towards that, which is great. A lot of them had this aging in place model, so the person doesn't have to move as a disease progresses, which is very pertinent to care. And so with that said, it allows the person to really have all the resources and tools that they need to have that quality of life when they're going through that journey. Where the family members can feel rest assured that it's okay, that they can go and visit and just be, like I said, the daughter, the son, things like that. And so to your point, I think that, that's where we're moving in terms of the industry. And then of course there's that skilled nursing component when needed, right? If the person needs some rehabilitation and whatnot. So.
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms with the skilled nursing homes. That's they're in for a roller coaster ride. But I think it's great. And then just kind of, we're getting close to the end, but going back quickly to the Dementia Connection Institute, who is that? Is that designed for just families? Is it designed for families and professionals? Or I imagine it's for really anyone that wants to learn more, but who is that catered for those that are interested in taking the next step after reading your book and then saying, hey, listen, I want to get some type of certification and more kind of formal teaching and learning?
Absolutely. So it's for everybody. And so when, our services are open to all professionals. And so when I say all professionals, it's not just healthcare. We are catering towards first responders. We're, catering to folks who are trying, a lot of cities are becoming dementia friendly, so librarians, grocery, attendants, bankers, right, who want to learn more about dementia. We recommend that they go to the Institute so they can gain more knowledge. Now, the particular certification programs we just came out with, the DCS and the DCSCT, which is the trainer component, those are specific to healthcare. Now, the DCS is available for family caregivers. And then the DCSCT is available for for healthcare professionals. So with that said, we are looking to develop another certification program for first responders. And so when that comes out, we'll let you know, but certainly that will, be in the works as well. But really anybody can come to the Institute and take advantage of our services. Midsummer, what we'll be coming out with is an online classroom, which will be available for everybody. And so people can take these educational seminars at their leisure. And what's fun is that we built in some brain games too. So it helps with your learning advantage. So it's fun, it's engaging. You remember a lot more when you walk away from our online courses. And so look for that midsummer, which we're really excited about. And then later in the year, we'll be adding more to our website with more publications. We actually hope to start our own podcast at some day. So I'm going to have to pick your brain on that, Ryan. And, just some other fun things that we're doing later in the year. We do hope to boost some of our family support services by maybe offering some support groups. But we also do offer one-on-one family private sessions to help folks through this caregiving journey. And so we're open for that too. And then last but not least, of course, for organizations, we're offering program development. So if they're wanting to bring us in and implement the Dementia Connection model within their organization, we're happy to do that as well.
If you start your own podcast, and I probably won't be able to open it with the greatest podcast of all time, I might have to start saying the second greatest podcast of all time. No, but and then going back to your book, like obviously Amazon is the place to go for that. But are there any other places that you want? Is there a personal website that you want people to find that, and certainly plug that a little bit as well?
Sure. So we would definitely want you to come to the Institute at dementiaconnectioninstitute.org. But you can also find the book on Barnes & Noble, and it's also available on Johns Hopkins Press website too. So, but yeah, definitely visit us at dementiaconnectioninstitute.org. Stay tuned to all of the things that we're doing. There's a button on there where you can click Stay Informed to get on our email list, and periodically we send newsletters out to let you know what's we're developing, because like I said, we just opened in January, so our services are evolving this year, and we're just excited to bring more and more to the community.
And one thing I'll say to that, so you're talking about a $15 or a $20 book. You're talking about a program that costs a couple $100 that probably will go up in price as it gets more popular. To put that in perspective to people who are listening, in a ALF, assisted living in Massachusetts memory care, is $8,000 to $10,000 a month. My services are $40 a month with an 8-hour minimum. So you're talking about a low amount of money in the grand scheme of things. When you get into senior care, it's not about if it's expensive, it's just a matter of how expensive it's going to be. So being able to pick up a $20 book or take a class that's going to allow you to help your loved one that much more longer and be more knowledgeable about what's going on is going to be investment that pays for itself time and time again. Because if you hire somebody like me, I'm happy to take your money, but it's going to cost you a lot more than the books and the trainings that are out there. And certainly a book can't replace one-on-one care, but it's definitely going to be able to help you in this journey, and it's definitely worth the investment. So I always like to put that in kind of perspective of somebody who might say, well, $20 or $100 for a course or whatever it is. It's like, well, compare it to some of the other things that are in this industry, and you'll realize it's really not that expensive whatsoever. Granted, that might fall flat on its face being $6 a gallon for gas right now, but in relative to our space, it's an affordable thing to learn about what's going on with dementia that's going to affect everybody that's listening to this, whether it's personally or whether it's an in-law that has it, a family friend that's dealing with it. It's very much going to be like cancer, where everybody's going to know somebody that dementia has affected. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And you gave a lot of useful information, and I definitely think you definitely put the tool in toolbox. So thank you so very much for giving the listeners some information, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it as well.
And for all of you that are out there listening, thank you so very much for listening to another episode, and we will catch you on the next one.